You are listening to the Booktrospective Podcast, a podcast for all types of books. And even though we read all types of books across all different types of genres, we want to give a disclaimer. Many of our books and a lot of our content sometimes is intended for mature audiences. And we don't believe in censorship, but we do want our listeners to have the opportunity to decide if our episode or podcast is good for them. So with that, let's get into the episode. Hey, it's Dominique.
And Keely.
And you are listening to Booktrospective. And this week we are covering Secret Santa by Andrew Shaffer. Keely, how has your week been?
My week overall has been pretty good. It's really cold today.
Freezing.
There's snow.
Ugh.
But yeah, overall it's been pretty good.
Carter said, "Can we go snow sliding today?" And then he was upset. I said, "There's not enough snow." And I'm like, "You're mad at me. Like, I control the weather. I don't. I hate the snow."
Snow sliding.
And
He's
I know,
so cute.
oh my gosh. I know I live in Indiana. I hate it. And I know people get so excited. And I'm just like, literally. I sent to the group chat, our book club group chat, like what's her name? Is that Lucy from Peanuts?
Yes.
Yeah, like her like frowning in the snow. That is me. Like, ugh.
See, I wouldn't mind the snow if it wasn't so cold.
Yeah, or if I could just stay inside. Like, if I don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's beautiful. I was like, it's so pretty, but like, it was 68 yesterday, the day before, whatever it was. Josh rode his motorcycle. Freezing. But yeah, so that's, it's cold. What?
I don't know if you saw it, but the Delaware County awareness page or whatever, I don't know if you're on that one on Facebook.
Oh, I think I'm blocked from that one. I think I got kicked out.
Somebody said, is the Muncie Community Schools closed due to the snow? I'm like, there's
not even an
barely
inch.
any snow.
There's like a quarter of an inch.
It's not sticking to the sidewalks or the road.
Maybe I'm not banned from that one. I am banned from one of the community pages.
But I saw that and I was like, are you serious? You would get a call. And I'm like,
yes. Multiple calls.
Dominique and I talk about this
all
the time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're entering that season for sure. Yeah, no. And then Carter goes to Burr, so like they're never going to my son's school does not use buses or anything, so they always are gonna have school. And they're on a college like system, so unless the college closes, they're not closing.
Which is
they've closed like once. I think once the entire time I went to college there, they closed. So yeah, what did I do this week? What have we done this week? It's weird because, I finished my class. Did we record earlier this week? When did we record?
I have no idea, but I feel like I've seen you this week.
I feel like we have too, but I don't think...
well, we did the readathon on Saturday, so
Oh,
that was just a couple days ago.
That was. But it's already Thursday. It's actually almost been a week. I don't literally know what day it is.
This week has gone by so quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I took my test last week. I don't know what day it is.
Did we record it? I don't think we did.
We haven't recorded this week. No, we were going to.
Yeah.
I'm lost. But I don't know. It's almost Thanksgiving. We're taking next week. I mean, you'll have episodes, but we're not recording next week. And tonight, we're having a super book club because we're all making soups. I made zuppa. Keely's making potato. We have an assortment of soups. And then our non-cookers are bringing, like, crackers and rolls and stuff.
I need to tell people to bring their own drinks.
Oh, yeah. Also, I was like, maybe we should I want, like, a flight. Like, I was like, maybe we should bring cups instead of bowls, like styrofoam.
See, I tried to find, like, the, like, little cup.
Yeah.
Or little bowls, or, like, the Dixie cups.
Yeah.
But which I only went to Target, but I got, like, smaller bowls.
Yeah.
But.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But I was like, I'm going to make, like, a soup flight.
Yeah. Well, and that was my idea because I want us to vote on the best soup.
Ah, yes.
And then
maybe I should label mine.
I have we didn't meet the book sold goal last week.
Oh,
and I have that Twister's gift card. So I was like, that could be the gift for whoever wins.
Now I need to win because I haven't been there. It's like a soda shop where they make special drinks. And I have
so
never
good.
been.
So good.
Yeah, so we're doing that. And then, yeah, I think that's it for the week. So excited about that. I love a good soup. Josh is upset. I told him I'd give him a bowl before I leave. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. So we are in... Well, I guess when you guys hear this, it will be post-Thanksgiving, as a matter of fact. So sorry. I'm like... I don't know what day or time it is. So happy post-Thanksgiving. I hope you guys, like, pigs out I hope like your diets went to crap, and I hope you ate like horribly and enjoyed it so much. Have no guilt. So happy December. I'm assuming. I think it's December 2nd when this comes out. So we're kicking off the holiday season with Secret Santa. So Keely, do you have the blurb?
I do. The office meets Stephen King dressed up in holiday tinsel in this fun, festive, and frightening horror comedy set during the horror publishing boom of the 80s. By New York Times bestselling satirist Andrew Shaffer. Out of work for months, Lussi Meyer is desperate to work anywhere in publishing. Prestigious Blackwood-Patterson isn't the perfect fit, but a bizarre set of circumstances leads to her hire, and a firm mandate. Lucy must find the next horror superstar to compete with Stephen King, Anne Rice, and Peter Straub in this 80s. And it's the 80s after all. And horror is the hottest genre. But as soon as she arrives, Lucy finds herself the target of her co-workers' mean-spirited pranks. The hazing reaches its peak during the company's annual Secret Santa gift exchange, when Lucy receives a demonic-looking object that she recognizes but doesn't understand. Suddenly, her coworkers begin falling victim to a series of horrific incidents akin to a George Romero movie, and Lucy suspects that her gift is involved. With the help of her former author, the flamboyant Fabian Nightingale, Lucy must track down her anonymous Secret Santa and figure out the true meaning of the accursed object in her possession before it destroys the company and her soul. I struggled with that one.
That one was a tongue twister. It's okay. Oh, I was like, I know those authors. And you were like, when you were like, Stephen King, Anne Rice, and Peter Straub, I was like, I know all three of those. So proud of myself. Anyways, so if you could describe this book in one word, what would you say?
I would say...
I have a good one.
I guess I would say curse. I mean, that's the first one that comes to mind, so.
I don't have a word, but I have like a phrase, which is Papa Wee Wee.
Yeah.
I was like, it's another like cursed doll kind of book thing or whatever. No, I was going to say like demon or like something like that. I don't know. So this this book, I have no idea. I don't read the blurb. I had no idea what it was going to be. But obviously like it really doesn't focus around the Secret Santa that much. Like I feel like that really is not like the big thing. But so Lucy, it takes place in the 80s, like 86 or something like that. And so she's in New York and she cannot get a job, like Keely said. And so she goes to work at this publisher, which like basically is a terrible publisher, but she like cannot get a job. And she goes to talk to Xavier, who is the owner, and he literally dies as she's like forcing him to give her a job. So his son ends up hiring her, but was like, hey, you have 3 weeks to like find me the next Stephen King. And he like gives her whatever she wants, like makes her like senior VP and all this stuff. So everyone, like the building's super weird. Like it's like dirty, nasty, has like all these like bars on it. Everyone's weird. Like the door has all these locks on it. And so she's like going through like trying to find the next Stephen King. And then like weird stuff keeps happening. When she met Xavier before he died, she noticed that he had this essentially like this doll. And so she's German descent. And this doll is called a Parishton. I listened to it on the audiobook, so I'm a Parishton. I think that's what it is. And so it's essentially, to me, it sounds like a voodoo doll, but it's a doll. And she like was like, my grandma had one of those growing up. And so Xavier had one, but it seems like, I don't know, his seems like to be a little different than the one like she recalls. And so she like kind of connects with that. And then the doll kind of like goes missing or whatever, and then it pops up later in the book as well. But then while like this doll is around, like weird stuff starts happening. There's poop in the office. There's like weird artists who take their job like very, very serious. There is a head editor who they call the Raven, because she's scary. And she cannot find the next Stephen King. Like she's really struggling. And it all like culminates in like, not only is she like feel like she's getting hazed, but then her coworkers all kind of gang up on her and they think like she's the Antichrist. So yeah, so it's kind of like, do I need to keep this job, or like, am I going to make it out of here alive kind of deal? So I think it was kind of fun. Like, it was a little like kooky. And yeah, I'm sure there's triggers for this book.
I'm sure there are. I would definitely say lobotomy, cursed objects, dolls, murder, death.
There's like talk about Nazis.
Yeah.
So like
rituals,
Holocaust stuff.
Yeah. I need to start writing them down as I come across them.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Anything else?
I think
those are like the big ones.
Overall, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, nothing too insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so if you have not read this book, you don't wish to be spoiled, this is your notice to pause here and come back later. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So this book actually opens with 2 quotes. I don't have the quotes in front of me, but the first quote is from Oprah, which is basically like something about like a gift is like meaningful based on like the thought that's put into the gift. And then the second quote is from Brad Pitt, which basically just says, what's in the box?
From the movie 7.
Yeah.
I was like, I love these.
So we actually open up with a prologue, and we're in Germany, 1945, and the world... I cannot say World War. You guys know I cannot say that. The war has just ended. And so, like, troops are on their way home, but we are introduced to Xavier, who we know in the, like, the meat of the book is, like, the head of the publishing company. But Xavier, at this point, is a soldier, an American soldier. And, well, is he American? I'm assuming so, because he's going to get sent home. Yes. Okay. So he's not actually German related at all. He just happens to be over there.
Yeah.
Okay. So Xavier is an American soldier, and him and like one of his other soldier friends, Duluth, I believe. They're like on this secret mission, which is nothing like serious. They're just trying to get like the boys back on base, a Christmas tree, because like obviously it was a war, it's depressing, whatever. So like Duluth is telling him like, oh, he's got this like girl back home, and Xavier's basically like, yeah, like she's not gonna last or whatever. And then like Duluth actually like admits like, yeah, I don't have a girl. She left me long ago because like you guys know about history and how long the war was. So Xavier at this point is like almost 30, and like Duluth is like supposedly only like 21, so like they're not like close in age. They don't really like relate when it comes to much things. So like he goes out and they're getting ready to like start cutting down this tree, but like Xavier sees something in the snow that's silver, and he like thinks it's a landmine, and before he can like stop Duluth, because he's like basically like tackling him in the snow, Duluth tackles him and they land on it, but it's not a mine. Luckily, it is unfortunately a body. It's a boot connected to a body of a Nazi soldier, and this soldier's entire face is like blown off. And essentially it looks like the soldier killed himself. And so he's actually surprised. Xavier is like that scavengers, like animals having like gotten to this soldier's body. And he sees that there's like a lockbox with the soldier. So he opens it, and like he immediately starts to feel like terrified, but like excited as well. And Duluth is like, what's in the box? And Xavier drops the flashlight he's holding, and then he just raises his axe, and Duluth looks at Xavier and he's like, you don't look so good. And then we cut to New York City, December 1st, 1986. So we meet Lussi, which Lussi is spelled Lussi.
Which I kind of like.
Yes.
It's different.
And Lussi is going to see a publisher, which happens to be Xavier's publishing company. It's called Blackwood-Patterson Publishing. But the building is literally like disgustingly dirty. It's basically like covered in soot. The windows have like iron bars on them, but she's like in love with it, like first sight. She's there for an interview, and she's like very impressed by how like eccentric this place is. She really wants the job. Mr. Patterson is like super old, and she goes inside, And like she goes to meet him and he's like, sorry, position's filled, bye. And she's like, well, you know, your company statistics suck basically, like you should hear me out. And he looks like over her work and like basically she is a horror editor and he doesn't want anything to do with like horror. And he's like, you know, you should just keep working where you're working at. But essentially her publisher had got bought out by another company and she got laid off. And he says like, why do you even feel qualified to apply for this job? And he's like, did you even feel like you really had a shot here? And he calls her work tripe. And he's like, I don't like horror, basically. He says, I wouldn't even take my son to see that. And his son's a grown man. And she says, you wouldn't know a good book if it walked in and took a bite out of your heart. And as she's leaving, she like trips and knocks down like a bunch of books. And he doesn't even like look over his desk and like check on her or anything. But she knocks over a box, and in the box, she sees a doll that she recognizes from when she was a child. And it's a handmade doll that she had when she was a kid that her grandma, who was German, had brought over from Germany. And it's called a Peristin, which is kind of like perished. And it's to ward off evil spirits. And the body of this one is like made of animal pelt, but the face is like this like hideous face. It's carved out of wood and it's like almost like a devil face. And Xavier tells her to leave, and then he like seems like he's like shaking like all over, and his breathing is really weird, and he looks like he's like looking around, and he's like, my pills. And he pulls out like nitroglycerin pills, which are for when you're having chest pain. And he grabs her and he says, don't leave me. He says, don't leave me. And she's like, no, like I'll wait for the ambulance. And he like is like, no, don't leave me alone with it, talking about the doll. So the next day she goes to the ICU and she's like, why am I even here? Like, I don't even know Xavier Blackwood. Like, this is stupid. And she is waiting for the elevator and she sees a man on the phone, and the man's just like, I can't believe Dad's dead. Like, what am I supposed to do? Run this stupid company? And he's like, calm down, Mom. Like, you handle the funeral bullshit. I have too much on my plate. So obviously this is Xavier's son. And she like turns to him and gives him these flowers that she got out of the trash can. And she's like, I'm sorry. And he's like, did you get these out of the trash can? But he's like, who are you? And she's like, I was at the office, like when it all happened. And we learned that his name is Digby, of all names. Like, what a name. Digby Blackwood. And he asks like, well, how did your interview go? And she says like, oh, we had like a nice chat. And he's like, that's unusual. My dad doesn't have like nice chats, basically. And he asks about her books, and he actually recognizes a book that she's worked on. And he's like, you know, you don't really seem broken, which is like what my dad normally does to people's spirits. And he says, you know, I wish my dad dead a lot, but I actually wish he would have got rid of the company first, because now like I have to deal with it, and the company is in the red and no one wants to buy it. And she asks about filling the job, basically, and she basically finally admits like, okay, your dad hated me, and I lied, but like I really think I could help the company, and like it's your company now, so like you could hire me, basically. And he's like, you know, fine, whatever. He said, I'll pay you 10% more than what you're making now, and you're hired. And she's like, okay. She's like, maybe I can push this a little bit. She's like, could it be a senior position? And he's like, fine, but it's a temp position. And he says, I want the next Stephen King, but you have 3 weeks to get a contract on the next bestseller, and then you can be a senior editor. And she's like, okay. I've girl bossed too close to the sun. Because basically it's like the end of the year, and basically at the end of the year, publishers and like book stuff is like not doing anything at the end of the year. But she thinks it might be good because that means like things are probably just piling up on people's desks. So maybe she can like grab something. But she really needs the money because she's like behind on rent with her roommate, and she's from Iowa, and she really wants to go home for the holidays and see her family. So she needs the money for that. And so she's like, well, how will you know if it's the next Stephen King? And he's like, because I'll want to read it. And he's like, but I'm not going to read it. So you'll need to get the editor-in-chief to sign off on it. So she goes to her first day of work, and she makes German fruitcakes. Somebody please tell us, do any of you eat fruitcakes? I've never met a soul on earth that ate a fruitcake. It does not look appealing. I can't believe that there's people that are, I mean, they keep making them, so I'm assuming there's people that eat them, but who?
Probably the same people who eat candy corn. Do you like candy corn?
I do like candy corn. I do like that. I would say the same people that like circus peanuts, but
oh yeah,
that's terrible. Or like those, which are my grandparents, but like those orange and black Halloween candies. Do you remember those? Are you old enough for those? They're literally they're like butter scotches or something. They literally don't even have a name. They're just black and orange toffee thing. They're not toffee because I like toffee. They're just like butterscotch thing. I don't know. They're disgusting. my grandparents used to pass those out, and I'd be like, nobody wants those.
Yeah, no, the circus peanuts for sure.
Ugh, nasty.
Oh, yuck.
I look at a fruitcake and I'm like, who is eating that? I just can't imagine.
Love
like,
you guys, but
I do. Like, I don't hate you, and I'm so sorry if I yucked your yum, but leave us a comment. So anyway, she makes some German fruitcakes to impress the office, which I'm like, okay. And especially the editor-in-chief, whose name is Mary Beth, but we will refer to her as the Raven going forward. And so she gets to the office, and Gail, who is the receptionist, takes her to the office. And I laughed so hard because she pulls out her number 2 pencils, but they're not just like regular number 2 pencils. They're the like how do you say that? The Grande whatever pencils.
Hold on.
I don't know how to say them.
Bother me.
Which I have some of those at home. They're nice pencils.
Is it like Ticonderoga or something like that?
Ticonderoga or something like that.
Ticonderoga.
Ticonderoga. I think that's what it is. Yeah. Those are like very special. And she has a Phantom of the Opera mug. And so she goes to find like the copy editors, which I know nothing about publishing, which is funny because my sister, I think, kind of works. I don't really know what my sister does. That's hilarious. But she is like kind of in that world. But I feel like she's more like the film side. But then again, I don't really know what she does. So like she goes to the copy editors. So there's different types of editors. And she's like, they all look like 40-year-old zombies. And she meets Joe, aka Sloppy Joe. And they call him Sloppy Joe, not because he looks sloppy, but because he left a comma out of editing once, which I love like those memes when it's like if you leave the comma out, it has a different meaning. He left a comma out of the editing once, and it says, and he basically tells her like, we don't do horror here, and she's like, well, we do now, basically. And so she asks for the slush files, which is basically like the stuff that nobody reads, and he tells her it's in the basement, and he goes, it's spooky. And so she has to take the stairs down because the elevator doesn't work, and it's raggedy, and there's roaches, and I would be leaving.
Yeah,
thank
you.
I'm not doing that. Like literally, like the stairs are like wooden planks. I'm not going down there. So she finds it. It's like a pile of like unrevised manuscripts, and she gets like 13 or 14 of the horror ones. And like as she's getting them, the lights go out. So those raggedy stairs, the elevator doesn't work. There's roaches, and then the lights go out. And then as she's getting ready to leave, she's like hearing stuff, and she goes, So you read horror. And you go, hello?
No, thank you, because what's going to be calling back?
Yeah, so she doesn't get a response. And she's like, I'm getting hazed. Okay. Also, these manuscripts are inside of like a caged room. And the door shuts, and now she is stuck inside.
And what I'm envisioning is like the like evidence stock at like...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can like, yeah. That's all I, yeah, no. So she's stuck inside. So she's like trying to calm herself down. And she feels like she's not alone. Huh. Okay. And she feels like someone's holding the door closed. And she hears someone say, hunger.
No.
Okay.
That would be my last day there.
Yeah. First and last. So then the door is like ripped open, and she can see like this glowing white figure, and she screams. But then the light comes on, and she gets out, and she sees, oh, it's just like a ghost decoration. I don't care. I'm never coming down here. And she like collapses on her way up out of there, and she like is like in the middle of the hall, and Digby finds her, and he tells her like, I'll just have someone bring the manuscripts up. Wonderful, because I'm never going down there again. And he basically like, because she asked about the secretary, which he fired the secretary because the secretary was basically his dad's mistress his whole entire life. So he hates her. So she now has to go to like the editor's meeting. So it's the Raven and then these 3 women that she calls Dracula's brides. And then like all the other editors too. Like there's different types of editors. So she goes in and she introduces herself, and one of them goes, there's a spider in your hair. And then, like, essentially, like, because she, like, hoodwinked herself into this position, like, everyone's, like, below her except for the Raven. She can basically, like, get the, like, impression that, like, the Raven does not like her. So they're, like, talking about a story, and, like, it seems like maybe it's kind of a horror story because she's like, oh, you should put, like, a skull on the cover. And they actually, like, agree and, like, oh, that's a good idea. So she's kind of surprised because the Raven seems impressed, and, like, that meeting goes well. And as they're getting ready to leave, the Raven tells everyone, like, you know, make sure you leave your Secret Santa gift out. But she tells Lucy, obviously, like, you know, you won't have one because we already drew names. But then one of the brides speaks up and goes, oh, like, she has a gift. Like, I saw it under the tree. And Lucy's like, I'm not really sure who's pranking me, but she's like, I don't think it's Digby. Like, he doesn't seem like he would do that. So she like leaves and she goes to the Trade Center. If you've never been to New York, there is a mall in like the Trade Center district. Because she is like one of the authors she used to edit for is having like a signing there, which there's like nobody at the signing. So she goes, and she like is just kind of down in dumps because none of the manuscripts she pulled were like any good. So like she's trying to like call around now to different companies, but like as soon as she tells them where she works, like none of them are taking her serious. So she's going to see like one of her author friends, and his name is Fabian. And she's like telling him about her new job and how like Xavier died, and he's like, oh, did he die at his desk? And she's like, how did you know? And he's like, because those kind of men always die at their desk. Like, what do you mean? But finally, like an old lady comes in, like that's basically like Fabian's like one true fan, and basically like kind of follows him around like everywhere he goes. And Lucy actually lives like on Staten Island, so she like commutes a lot. And she decides to go out and drink with Fabian, and they go out and drink absinthe. I don't know, like I've always heard not to do that. I don't know if anyone's ever seen Euro Trip, but they were seeing little green fairies and stuff, and I just was like, yeah, I don't want that experience, so I'm good. So the next time she goes to work, it's the day of the Christmas party at work. And she goes to her office, which she was pretty sure she locked, but the door's open, and there's a man in her office, and his name is Cal, and he's her intern, which is weird because how does this business have interns? But whatever. And he keeps putting his feet on her desk, and she's like, get your feet off of my desk. Like, have you lost your mind? And he thinks that he thinks she should look at Stephen King's children for like the next talent, which that's funny. Do any of his children write? Like Stephen? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I just never knew.
Now, like recently, I believe.
Oh, okay. I feel like a lot of times people's like kids don't do the thing that they did. Like sometimes they do, but like not very often. And so like she's like talking to Cal or whatever, and she's like, "Do you smell that?" And she looks down and she's standing in poop. So she goes to the bathroom, which does not have a mirror. This building sucks. And the Raven comes in and says like, oh, looks like somebody needs to call Alvin. And she like kind of smiles at her, like cleaning off her shoe. And she like goes in the bathroom stall to smoke. And the Raven says, we haven't had interns in a long time. And also like we've never really had like genre editors before. So like now that she's doing this whole like horror thing, like this is all new. So Lucy asks the Raven like, whose dog is running around? And the Raven says, it's Alvin. And she goes, oh, Alvin has a dog? And the Raven says, no, I never said he had a dog. I said, it's Alvin. Insinuating that Alvin has pooped in her office. So they like look at each other and they both laugh. And Lucy says, you're kidding, right? And the Raven just like leaves and she goes, I'll see you at the party. So Lucy decided like not to give them her like fruitcake the other day when she first started. Cause she was like, I'll just save it for the party. So it's been fermenting. Yeah. So she goes to get her fruitcake and it's gone. And Sloppy Joe comes in and basically says, Mr. Blackwood loved fruitcakes. And she's like, okay, like, did his ghost come and take my cake? Like, is that what you're trying to say? So she goes down to the party and she obviously feels like a kid at the kid table. Like, nobody is like talking to her. Also, Digby's there. Like, nobody's talking to these two. But like, they're having like a real party in the middle of the workday. Like, there's actually like liquor in the punch. Like, I don't know what kind of job this is, but whatever. So after a few drinks, like she decides to go around and like meet people, and they're having a good time until the Raven's like, okay, everyone sit down and do gifts. And they do the gifts like one by one, looking and seeing what every single person got. So like Digby gets his gift and he like shakes it and he's like, oh, is this from you? And his box just says from Santa, and it's actually from Maureen, who has worked there since he was a kid. And it's literally a Gumby, which I remember Gumby. But basically it's a toy. It's a toy that she took from him when he was a child. She said, no, it's literally the one I took from you as a child. Here, have it back. So they finally get to Lucy and she opens her gift and it's the Periston, which is interesting because the Periston last was seen in Xavier's office, and no one has been in his office since then, unless Digby's been in there, but like no one else has really been in there. And so she actually is kind of excited to see it because she does want to fix it up, but Digby is like, what is it or whatever? And she's confused because then she's like, okay, so then who gave this to me? Because the only person that's been in his office is Digby. No one else has been in his office. So now she assumes she's being pranked again. So she just tells everyone, oh, the box is empty, whatever. So she takes the box to her office and she starts calling it, did she call it Herky or Jerky or Perky? Perky. This is what happens when I listen to audiobook. I'm like, I don't know which one it is. I'll ask Keely. So she starts to call it Perky because that was the name of the one she had. So she puts it on her shelf, and Fabian just like sneaks into the office. And he's like, this place is like a nursing home. She's like, how did you get in here? And he's like, you invited me here to spike the punch, and you wanted to take bets on who would hook up with each other. And so he's already spiked the punch. And he pulls out his manuscript because he has written a vampire novel called Transylvania Dirt. And because it's 1986, vampires are out currently. And he thinks that vampires are coming back in. And she thinks vampires are dead as well. And he's like, this is so funny because we read this book. And he's like, no. He's talking about The Light at the End, which we read The Light at the End by, who is that? Craig Spector and John Skip. It was John something. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we read The Light at the End by John Skip and Craig Spector a couple months ago for our horror book club. Shout out to Cam. And I was like, I love when I feel like I'm cultured. Because I read books. So basically Fabian's like, so The Light at the End is is it splatterpunky? Do they consider it kind of?
I would say probably.
Yeah. So he's like, basically like, it's like super popular, like out in Kansas, and it's splatterpunky. And he's like, I write this book, like vampires are coming back. The Light at the End is a vampire novel as well from the 80s. So like, that was just kind of fun. Like, I like when I can like connect and know what people are talking about. So anyways, he wants her to read the book because like his company is like not trying to push it or whatever. So she's like, well, did you get this cleared with your old company? Because like, I can't, steal my clients, basically. And he says, well, they already rejected it. So like, yeah, you can read it. And then he notices like the Periston and he's like, how old is this? And she's like, I don't know, or whatever. And he points at the bars on the windows and he goes, iron is supposed to keep evil spirits away. I wonder what Xavier was scared of. And then Fabian leaves. And so she goes back down to the party. And she has not seen Cal like the rest of the day or whatever. And the last time she saw him actually was when he kept putting his feet on her desk and she said like she was going to break his leg or something like that. So she wonders if he went to the basement. And so she grabs a flashlight because the light won't come on. Okay, I'm not going anywhere in somebody's spooky building where the light won't come on. Also, something weird has already happened to you down here. Why would you go down there and the light won't come on? So she goes down there with the flashlight. She calls his name, but he won't, like there's no response. So she's like, okay, either he's not down there or he's trapped. So she starts going back upstairs and she hears what sounds like an animal sound. And then like this gray blur that she thinks is a rat goes by her. Okay. And then she hears someone whistling the Andy Griffith song, which isn't that the do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm surprised Keely knows that, honestly.
My great uncle watches Andy Griffith.
I'm so shocked that she knows that.
Yeah, no, I watch a little bit of Andy Griffith.
That is so funny. So she hears that, and then she hears crying, and she finds Digby crying and like whistling, going through boxes. And at first, he thinks that she's his dad. But basically, he is going through these boxes of old balance sheets. And what we have found out is that this company has never been profitable, which makes absolutely no sense. And this is when he tells her that the secretary had like always been having an affair with his dad. And he actually didn't fire her. She just quit the day after Xavier died. And so he starts falling asleep and she goes, I'll just let you sleep it off down here.
No.
Excuse me?
You
I would fire you the next day.
Mm-hmm.
If you leave me in the basement of this dirty, nasty building, drunk,
yep,
we're going to have words. So then, and on top of that, it's creepy. And then she hears a sound again. So she goes over to the cage room and Cal is buried under manuscripts with a broken leg and the bone is sticking out. So she takes him to the ER and he has a broken tibia. So she is like, okay, something weird is going on here. And she was gonna, like, this party takes place on a Friday. So she was like, I was gonna go in on the weekend, but now I'm kind of weirded out, so I'll just wait. And she's like, I don't even know if I should go back working here. Like, what is going on? So she's walking home and there's a black guy and he comes up to her and he introduces himself as an OSHA inspector. And she's like, is this about Cal? Like, I can't help. And he's like, who's Cal? And he says, there's been accidents happening at Blackwood for years. And he says, I'm warning you, your life may be in danger. And he gives her his card and he says, I didn't want to meet at the building, but I've been waiting for you. So she runs into the building and maybe this is the next week. This might be Monday. And Gail is like, are you okay? And she goes to like grab his card, but she must have lost it. And Gail pulls a gun out from under her desk. And she's like, excuse me? Gail's like, yeah, I stay locked and loaded. So she's like, she asked Gail, like, hey, I need to fill out any forms for Cal's injury on Friday. And she's like, oh, no, it had to be done like in 24 hours. So I sent it in on Saturday morning. And Gail says, this is an old building. Accidents happen. We're covered by insurance. And then the gun goes off and like the entire building like shakes. I'm like, I got to get up out of here. Like, this is dangerous. And so Lucy does not feel safe. And she wonders why the inspector didn't know about Cal's injury. And she's like, okay, did Gail really send it in? Or like, is she just lying to me? And she's like, are the bars on the windows keeping something out? Or are they keeping something in? So she goes up to her office and the door is open just like the last time. And this time it's Digby. And he doesn't have socks on. And he says that Cal is off cleaning his shoes. And she's like, Cal? He had a broken leg. Like, what is he doing back? And Digby's like, oh, he's fine. He's on crutches. Like, he's good. And she's like, why don't you have shoes on? He's like, I stepped in something. And she's like, really? I stepped in something on Friday. And they like lock eyes. And she's like, yeah, we stepped in the same thing. And Digby says, yeah, I have an exterminator coming to take care of her. And she's like, huh? And she's like, her? And he goes, Cyndi Lauper, the raccoon's been running loose.
I was like, what? He said Cyndi Lauper. What are you talking about?
Like, what?
The raccoon.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
And so Digby thanks her for like helping him on Friday because he was really drunk. He's like, I don't think I was drinking that much. And she realizes it's because of the absinthe that Fabian put in the thing. And she's like, oh, like that's why he thought I was his dad and like all that stuff. And he tells her that Xavier's funeral is going to be tomorrow at freaking Carnegie Hall. Like apparently Xavier is really popular. And he asks, like, have you found the next Stephen King yet? And before she can even reply, Cal comes in and she notices that the parish den is gone. So she asks if Cal has seen the doll, and he says no. And she tells him, like, you can sit down and just sit here all day and read. Like, you're on crutches. But the Raven comes in and she's like, hey, I want to borrow him. Because basically, like, when the Raven was like, oh, we don't even have interns. And, Lucy was basically kind of feeling bad. She's like, well, you can borrow him. So, like, now she's coming to steal him. And so before he goes, Lucy tells him, like, if you need to speak up, like, you don't have to, like, overwork yourself. Like, I'm the only person that seems to think it's not normal for you to be working this soon. But before he goes, Cal's like, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Like, I'm just going down the hall. And she thinks to herself, before it was all said and done, she should have told him to run from that building. So she goes back down to the basement to fix the pile that had collapsed on top of him. But it's already stacked back up. And the only thing that's left are his blood stains. And as she goes to leave the basement, her foot hits something and it's Perky. But she doesn't remember bringing Perky down there. And she still feels like she's being pranked. So she goes to make coffee. And like off of the coffee room or the break room or whatever, she like steps off onto the fire escape. And she can see like there's like a window into like the conference room. And it seems like everybody is in there having a meeting, including Cal, which is so weird. And she's like, why am I not in there? And then Sloppy Joe looks out the window and she like waves at him and he shuts the curtains. So she feels real paranoid. And so she goes, I would be too. So she goes back to her office and she notices that the art editor's door is open. And so like when she first like got hired, they were like, yeah, the art people don't like you like in their space or whatever, but he's not in there. So she peeks inside and his name is Stanley. And she peeks inside and she sees like that cover that she had suggested. So she's like, oh, like that looks cool or whatever. And he shows up and he's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, like I was just looking around. But he starts like frantically going through his pencils and he like he collapses on the floor crying and goes, Norma, what did you do with her? He says, you tried to take her the other day and we've been together since I was at my other place. And she's like, what the hell is wrong with you? So basically, like that first day in the meeting, Norma is a mechanical pencil. He had dropped his pencil in the meeting, and she tried to pick it up and give it to him. And he like snatched it up. So now he can't find his pencil, and he thinks that she's like out to get him. So he kicks her out of the office. And so as she's like confused in the hallway, the Raven comes up holding the mechanical pencil. And she goes, what did you do to him? And like Lucy's like, I didn't do anything to him. And that's when she like shows the pencil. And she goes, this is Norma. And she's like, he left it in the conference room. And so the Raven is like, are you going to cry? And Lucy's like, no, I cry at home like a normal person, not at work. And the Raven goes, well, are you going to apologize? And Lucy's like, for what? And she's like, well, how would you feel if somebody was in your office? And Lucy goes, well, they're in there all the time, actually. She's like, people are like opening their doors now in the hallway. And the Raven's like, well, just give him a few hours. And she just like sticks the pencil under his door. And Lucy goes, where is Cal? And the Raven goes, well, I sent him uptown to get mail. And Lucy's like, uptown? He's on crutches. And the Raven's like, he's fine. Like, it's not that far. So she goes back to her office and she realizes that she left the doll, like the Patterson, in the art department. So now she has to like wait to go back there and get it. And then she realizes she made a whole pot of coffee and never even got her freaking coffee. So she goes back to get her coffee and they have drank it all. No one even left her a cup. So she's pissed. And someone like comes in to get creamer for their coffee, and they're like, she like is mean mugging them, and they're like, here, take it. It's like a McDonald's coffee or something. They're like, here, just take mine, just take it. So she like she stays like the rest of the day because she still has to get the doll back. So it's like the end of the day, and like she gets a phone call and she's like, oh, maybe it's like another like editor or something, but like it's just her sister. So she's like watching out the window to see if Stanley leaves so she can go get this freaking doll back or whatever. And like, it's finally, like, late enough that she's like, okay, I'm just going to go see. But before she goes, like, she's talking to her sister, and she asks, like, her sister, do you remember, like, the Patterson doll, Perky, or whatever? And her sister's like, you're not trying to get my daughter one of those, are you? Like, they're creepy. And she's like, no. Like, she's like, do you think our parents still have them or whatever? And she's like, I don't know. Like, they might have one in their basement, but whatever. So, you know, when she finally decides to go back to see if Stanley has gone, she, like, goes and sees, like, the light is off in his office. So she opens the door. It's dark, but she hears, like, a cough. And she's like, oh, my God, Stanley's waiting for me in the dark. So she just, like, shuts the door and leaves. She's like, forget it. I'll get it later. So she goes back to her office, and she makes sure to lock it this time because she wants to make sure that nobody's in her office tomorrow when she comes back. And she's like, I'll just have a meeting with Digby and Stanley tomorrow to, like, figure this all out. So the next morning, she shows up because everybody's going to go to the funeral. They're, like, going to ride a bus or something over to the funeral. And she's like, hey, has anybody seen Stanley this morning? And no one's seen him or whatever. So she's like, okay, good, like, perfect. But before she can even do anything, the Raven's like, hey, I'm going to need you to stay back and, like, wait for some packages for me because they're manuscripts and, like, they have to be signed for. And she's like, what the hell? Because she's like, I want to go to the funeral because there's going to be hot shots there and I need to find the next Stephen King. So she's like, you know what? I will agree as long as you agree to read Transylvania Dirt, which is Fabian's book. And so she's like, you know, I'll agree to do it as long as you will pass on this book to Digby, basically, or whatever. So she is going to stay behind. So she goes to her office and the door is still locked. So then she goes to get coffee and she decides, okay, I'm going to go get the doll because, like, obviously Stanley's not here. So she goes to Stanley's office and she opens the door, but Stanley is here and he's sitting at the easel and he's like not moving, but like his hand is twitching. And she like, okay, she tries to like shut the door before like he notices, but it like slams open. But he doesn't even move. So then she like touches his arm and he like freaks out and he's like swinging. And then she notices he has like blood on him and then he coughs blood on her. And then she notices that he has Norma stuck up his nose. So she like runs out of there and calls 911. And Fabian shows up and he's like, you look like you've seen a ghost. And they literally have to like pull Stanley out on a stretcher. And she feels really guilty because when that whole thing with like Norma happened yesterday, she had said that she was going to stick Norma where the sun didn't shine. But like she really didn't mean anything by it. And now he has Norma stuck up his nose. So Fabian had just stopped by because he needed to get his book back. But he's like, you know, I see this is a bad time. So like, I'll come back later. But she starts wondering if like what happened to Cal wasn't an accident because like now like all these incidents keep happening. So she's telling Fabian and he tells her, you know, you are of the right age to become a schizophrenic. And she's like, this is connected to my Secret Santa. Like, I just know it. And she's like, I don't want you to take your book because I want to be able to make an offer, but she's like, I also know like we can't really afford it as a company. And so then she notices the OSHA guy again, he told her his name was Peter. So she follows him into the park, which she has been warned as a young lady to never follow people into the park, but she does it anyways. And then she like loses him. So she stops at like one of the homeless fire bins and cause she's like, has like no coat on. Like, ma'am, you live in New York. Why don't you have a coat? So anyway, so Peter comes up to her and he's like, do you believe me now? And he tells her, my name's not Peter. My real name is Fred Munson, and I'm a publisher from Uptown. And he says, I used to be an editor at Blackwood. And he's like, I don't know if anyone there remembers me, but they actually do still talk about me. And I can't remember what they actually said about him. I don't remember that part. But like they did mention him.
There was a sign that said R.I.P. Frederick or something like that.
Oh, okay. And so she asks, like, are you a ghost? And he says no. And she says, okay, so why do you want to help me? And he says, because I used to be where you are, confused and scared. So basically, he had actually tried to be a priest, but then he was recommended to go into editing by someone who knew Xavier from the military. And by his first week of working there, the end of his first week working there, he knew something about that building was weird. And he had thought it was just because he was black. And she was like, were you hazed? And he says, Alan.
Yeah.
So Alan is mischievous. But he says, do you know about the bars in the building? And he says, the building was built by German immigrants. Most of the neighborhood was. And so basically the iron folklore is true. Like the Germans do believe iron like helps keep things out. He says, I think the bars can also trap evil within the building. And he says, I worked there for 2.5 months. I didn't even make my 90 days. And he said he was fired for asking questions. And so he gives her a book. And the book, he tells her the book is basically, what does he say? Something about, I thought I put it on there. Not letting something in or something. I don't know. Anyway, so he gives her a book. So she gets back to she gets back to the office and she sits at the front desk so she can like wait on these packages. And she opens the book and it's a Bible. So she's like, what? So she falls asleep at the desk. And when she wakes up, the Raven is like letting herself in. And she comes in like hooping and hollering because she's like, basically her manuscripts got delivered and somebody must have snatched them because she found them like with a homeless man and had to pay the homeless man for her manuscript, whatever. But then she notices that there's blood on Lucy, and she's like, what happened? And she basically tells the Raven what happened with Stanley, and the Raven's like, look, take the rest of the day off. So Lucy goes home and she like collapses on the couch and like her roommate's out of town. So she calls Fabian because she wants to show him the Bible. And Fabian's like, well, here's the thing. I've already left the house once today, and there's too many tourists who are acting like they've never seen snow before, so I don't really want to go back out. And then she's like, well, what about the library? And he's like, well, but it's like finals time. And she's like, Fabian, you live in New York City. Like, if you don't like people, you live in the wrong city. So anyways, he agrees to meet at the library. But before she can go to the library, she has to stop at the office because she actually left the Bible at the office. So she goes to the office, and Cal is there. And he's making up for hours. And she's like, you're an unpaid intern. Like, what are you talking about? But anyway, so she goes to get the Bible out of her desk and it's gone. And like another editor, her name's Rachel, she comes in and she's like giving her an update on Stanley and says like, basically Stanley is kind of okay, but like his brain was hemorrhaging. And like, if it had been another hour, he would have died. And the pencil had been pretty deep in his brain. And like, he can understand, but he cannot speak. He can't even like write. He can only draw pictures. And Rachel says, but the pictures don't make any sense. But when she gives Lucy the picture, it's a picture of the Pariston. And Lucy asks Rachel, like, do they know what happened? And Rachel says, I don't know. They think it was a suicide attempt. And Lucy wonders, like, is this doll protecting me from all these attacks? And then, like, weird stuff starts happening. So all of these birds start flying, like pigeons, start flying into the window. And Rachel, like, goes over to the window and, like, is looking out. And she starts screaming and she collapses. And, like, Lucy goes over there and then she smells something weird. And then she goes, I think I'm going to go night-night. And then she passes out. And then Lucy wakes up on the conference table being held down and tied up by Christmas lights. And so essentially she was chloroformed. So there's a bunch of cloaked people around this table and she realizes this place is a cult. She's like, I thought this place just seemed like a cult, but no, I think it really is. And so someone pulls out a really big knife and like her jacket's been taken off and like they're talking about a ritual and someone's like, this is not a ritual. This is a spiritual cleansing. And they're planning on cutting her heart out and like no one will look at her. And someone says, you know, this isn't personal. Some of us really fought for you, but we had to take a vote. And she says like, this is a mistake. And someone says, well, it was only by God's grace that we were able to stop you from harming Rachel. And like, it basically is the Raven talking. And then someone pulls out the Bible and they go, this was found in your imitation coat bag or coach bag. And they go, we also found a list of coworkers that you were trying to kill. But really, she had a list of coworkers because she was trying to figure out who her secret Santa was. And they're like, we also found your familiar. And then like Alan comes in with this like cat carrier, and inside of it, she can see these like glowing red eyes. And she's like, I don't have a cat. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, what do you have to say for yourself? And then like someone rips the tape off of her mouth and she goes, I'm not a witch. And she's like, where's your priest? You can't do a cleansing without one. And someone says, I'm a minister of the Universal Life Church. I'm cracking up. And she tells them, you're using the rules of a cleansing from a book that I edited, which is Satan's Lament. Like, they don't like horror books here, but they're using a horror book, which she edited. And I think that's so funny. And she says, I don't know why you would accuse me. I haven't done anything wrong. And they said, well, then why did you meet with Frederick Munson? And they said, when he was fired, he had to be escorted out of here with a straitjacket. And basically, they're like, he went off of his meds 2 months ago and he quit showing up to work. And his family picked him up this afternoon and he's about an hour away from the funny farm in upstate New York. And Lucy says, I don't know what I've done, but please. And like, basically they're like wearing all these masks. And so like the person wearing like a witch mask goes, you don't know what you've done. You lied about that today. Oh, the one wearing a witch mask goes, you don't know what you've done. You'd lie about that today of all days when we buried a legend. And so basically they think that she's a witch because when she was in the room, because she was in the room when Xavier had his heart attack, and because she told Cal that she was going to break his legs for putting his feet on his desk. And then the next time he put his feet on on her desk, you know, he broke his leg later that day. And she was like, I wasn't even there when he broke his leg. And they're like, well, no, but you have a familiar. And then they're also like, you know, you said you were going to shove Norma where the sun didn't shine. And she goes, well, if you think I'm such a powerful witch, what's stopping me from doing something now? And they're like, well, there's metal in the Christmas lights. So your magic has been nullified. And she says, I'm just lying. I'm not a witch. And then she brings up the fruitcake and she goes, well, I said that I hoped whoever stole my fruitcake would choke and die. And nothing ever happened. And the person wearing the witch mask goes, well, that's because you didn't know who took it. And then the Raven is the one wearing the witch mask. She lifts the mask and she goes, sorry, I had the munchies last week. And she says, you could have made a lot of friends around here with those baking skills. So we know one person who likes fruitcake. And so the Raven lifts the knife, but before she can stab Lucy, she literally starts choking and keels over and dies. So someone goes, oh my God, the iron didn't work. And the Christmas lights go out and everyone starts like running and panicking. But someone gives Lucy the knife and like frees her from like the bindings. And then she realizes that she at least has one ally in this room. So she rolls off the table and she like can literally smell the fruitcake. And she's like, that's not possible. That was days ago. So literally whatever choked the Raven was the fruitcake. It's like it came up from days ago. And as she goes to leave, she remembers the glowing red eyes and she goes to the cat carrier, but now it's like empty. So she goes out into the hallway and she makes it to like the front door and there's like a cab outside waiting and she's like, huh, what unusual luck. So she like runs and gets inside and she can like hear people like coming behind her to the door. And like she happens to get inside and Fabian is inside and she's like, go, go, go. And Fabian tells the cabbie like, she's with me. And she's like, I'll give you $5 or $50 or whatever for however many red lights you run or whatever. And so they go to Fabian's apartment, which by the way, happens to be his mom's apartment. And he's like, do you think I could afford this on an author's salary? So she tells Fabian everything. And basically like the reason he was there is because he waited for her like for an hour and a half at the library and she didn't show up. So like he tried to call the office and there wasn't any answer. And so he basically like, you know, decided to wait for her outside. So he's like, you know, we should call the police and like show them all your like markings from like being tied up. But she's like, no, like they'll literally lock me up for being crazy. And he's like, well, I don't think you're a murderer. And he's like, I also don't think you're a witch. He's like, they smell like patchouli. And he's like, I don't want to say what you smell like right now, but it's not that. And so then he quotes what Frederick had said, which is so when Frederick gave her the Bible, he said, don't bring the detestable things into your home, then you will be destroyed just like them, which is from Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 36, I believe. And so she realizes that this was a warning about something that was already in the building. And so Fabian suggests that we go upstate and check out the mental facility and see if Frederick is actually there and if they were telling the truth. And she says, if he's crazy, then so am I, because I saw something in that cat carrier, and I definitely saw birds flying into the window. So, something is going on. And Fabian tells her of the meowing nun, and she's like, what? And he's basically, hysteria is contagious. And she's like, okay, so you don't believe me. You think that Frederick's crazy, and so now I'm, catching the crazy from Frederick. And so, Fabian's mom comes back in, and she's like, oh, you must be, so proud of him. And she's like, he's okay, but he's no Stephen King. Okay, Andrew Shaffer must freaking love Stephen King because he said it 500 times in this book. But anyway, so Fabian says, remember how I told you I heard stories about Xavier Blackwood? You're not the first person that this has happened to. And he says, Blackwood is basically banned from participating in internships at Columbia due to disappearances of interns. And basically, the assistant, who her name is in here later, I can't remember what her name is, she was in charge. So the assistant that was having an affair with Xavier was in charge of the interns, and they basically would go missing all the time. And Frederick also was kind of like an intern. And so Fabian's like, you need to get some rest, so I'm going to give you some sleeping meds. And then tomorrow we'll take care of this. And he doesn't want her to go home because he thinks they'll be waiting for her. So she's thinking to herself, she's like, I have to go back to this office. My purse is there, my ID, my money. He's like, that is a suicide mission. And she's like, okay, well, I'm not going to go through the front door. I can go through the fire escape. And he's like, gosh, the heating bill must be atrocious if they leave that open. And he says okay, you're not going to get anything else out of there, are you? And she's like, I do want the Periston. And he's like, of course you do. You're crazy. And so she remembers, she thinks about his book and, how Fabian has, all this stuff going for him. And she doesn't want him to get involved. So she decides to put the pills he gave her in his tea. And she just, waits for him to pass out. And I was like, girl, you are so dumb. So she goes to see the assistant. Her name is Agnes. I knew I had it in here. And I put the hussy. So she waits for Fabian to pass out and she leaves. And so she goes to see Agnes, and Agnes is like, oh, come in, here's some coffee. And they sit, and Agnes starts crying, and Lucy apologizes, for her loss, because obviously she loved Xavier. But obviously Agnes couldn't go to the funeral because she's not the wife. And she says, we could never get married because the Catholic Church is old-fashioned, and they wouldn't marry us. And Agnes says, you have boy trouble. And she's like, Digby? And, Lucy just says, Agnes, I know that the missing interns are dead. Cut the crap or whatever. But she goes to the bathroom and she notices that there's a box in the bathroom that was in Xavier's office. And it's the same box that the Periston had been in. And she's like, so is Agnes my secret Santa? But she's like, Agnes wouldn't have known that Digby was going to hire her at the hospital that day. So, what's going on? So she comes out of the bathroom, and Agnes is sitting at the table holding the knife, because when Lucy had ran out of the building, she had the knife still that they tried to kill her with. So she's come all the way here with this knife. And now Agnes has the knife. So Agnes says, we need to talk. And Lucy says, I saw the box. And Agnes says, I thought you might. But she keeps calling her Laura. She will not call her by her right name. And she says, tell me what happened. And so Lucy tells her, the Raven's dead and about all the other stuff. And Agnes says, you can't stop it, my dear. He's chosen you. And Lucy's like, who, Xavier? And Agnes says, no, the boy. And Agnes asks her, what do you know about Nazis and the occult? And she basically tells her the box is not she tells her the box is Nazi paraphernalia discovered by Xavier. So what Xavier found all those years ago in the box was the Periston. And this is not a normal Periston like the one that Lucy had. This Periston has been demonized by the Nazis, and it's possessed by a demon or something like that. And after Xavier found this Periston, his luck turned for the better. So he got sent home very quickly from the army, even though he was supposed to stay there for months. And he got a huge settlement of cash, but that's because his parents died in a car crash. So Xavier was essentially keeping this doll hidden in the building, but it's like the magic of the doll was like seeping out from the building and drawing people in. And Agnes says, like, it took me weeks to buy into it, but she started to see things that she couldn't otherwise write off. And Xavier knew that it would continue to enrich him for his life as long as he would cater to the doll. And basically, like, the dolls can be trained to have a new master. And she tells Lussi, you're the reason that he killed my Xavier because you're his new master. He chose you. And she says, I did not wish for Xavier to die or ask to be its new master. And Agnes says, you said to Xavier that he wouldn't recognize a good book if it walked in the door and took a bite out of his cold heart. She says, I heard you through the door. And Agnes says, there was so much rage in you, and there's so much rage in you right now. And Agnes basically says, like, the doll basically forced her to help him. So she says, before I even knew it, I had placed the doll in the box and put him under the tree. So, like, the doll basically can, like, possess other people, too. So, like, when the doll felt Lucy's rage, it decided that he wanted her, and it killed off Xavier and then made Agnes give him to her. And Agnes says, Lussi says, I don't accept your gift. And Agnes says, this is one gift you can't return. And she says, your fortunes are already changing now that Mary Beth is gone. Who do you think is going to take over her position? And Agnes says, you must now do your part and make sure the boy is properly fed. So Agnes has been feeding this doll interns all these years. And Lussi tells Agnes, like, I'm leaving and I'm taking this box and you need to go turn yourself into the police. But Agnes doesn't say anything else. Her eyes basically, like, go opaque. And then she starts, like, foaming blood from the mouth. And her neck literally just snaps. So she's dead. And Lussi knows, okay, this is not going to start with me, but it is going to end with me. So she decides to get in Agnes's car and go back to the building. So she's going to go, her plan is to sneak in through the fire escape. And she thinks it's a good idea until she starts being harassed by the guys on the street. And so she's like walking with a box and they're like, what's in the box? She's like, toilet paper. And they're like, and so there's a girl and she's like, open it. And so she does. And she just has the bloody knife inside of it. And they all just start running. And like one of the girls falls. And so she like helps the girls up. And then she like literally has on like one of Fabian's really nice jackets and like gives it to the girl. And the girl's like, you're weird, man. Like, what's wrong with you? So she tries to climb up the fire escape, but she cannot get up there, and she just keeps falling in the trash can. So eventually Digby comes out and is like, I'm going to shoot you, but then he realizes it's her. So he's like, oh, like, I'll just, like, let you in the front door or whatever. And so he lets her in, and he's like, you know, I had a long day burying my dad. I couldn't sleep, so I came back to work. So they both, like, look at each other, and they're both like, I need to tell you something. He basically tells her, like, will you go get me something to drink, basically? And she's like, okay. So instead of doing that first, she goes to Gail's desk to try to get the gun, and it's gone. So then she goes to the conference room, and now all of the evidence is gone as well. And so she starts, like, calling out for the Patterson, and she's like, I don't want you to hurt anyone else. And her plan is that she's going to go and tell Digby everything, and then I don't really know what her plan was from there. So she goes to her office, and the door is unlocked, which is good, because her key was in her bag, which is in her office. And she can feel like someone is behind her. So she sits at her desk and opens her, like, compact mirror. And she literally can see, like, a super tall, dark figure with red glowing eyes behind her. And she is way too calm for me because I would be freaking out. And when she turns around, physically, all she sees is the doll. But in the mirror, she sees this big dark figure. It's like the Babadook or something. I don't know. Like, it's creepy. So she, like, opens the box, and her plan is, like, to try to, like, snatch the doll and put it in the box. So she tries and, like, fails, and everything just kind of, like, explodes all over the place. So she tries it again, and then she's able to, like, get in the box. So she, like, goes out, and she hears, like, a cry for help from the basement, and she's like, this has to be a trap. But it sounds like Fabian. So she decides to go down to the basement, knowing good and well this is a trap. And it is a trap, but it is also Fabian in the basement. So she goes down there, and she's not understanding how he's here because she's like, I drugged you. Why are you here? And as soon as she gets down there, the door shuts, and Fabian is laying there bleeding out from his chest. And so she presses on his chest wound, and he tells her he saw her sneak out, and he knew that she was going to come here and do something stupid. And she's like, I drugged you. And he says, did you think I gave you horse tranquilizers? Like, what did you think you drugged me with? And he basically was like, I was trying to like throw rocks at your window to get in. And then all of a sudden I heard a loud bang and I woke up here. So essentially he's been shot with Gail's gun. So she runs to the door trying to get out, but it's locked. And she like sits back down next to him and she smells a cologne on him. And she knows it's Digby's cologne that she smells. So she's like, why would Digby shoot you? And in her mind, he knows about the Paris Den and he's trying to make an offer. So she tells Fabian, like, she should have listened to him. She should have listened when he warned her about this place. And his breathing is getting really slow. And he says, promise me you won't let my books go out of print. And she's like, no, we're not doing that right now. But his smile is like frozen into place. His hands are going slack. And she thinks of like the last thing she can possibly do. And like she had put on like these silver bracelets, like just any protection she could. And she takes them off. She opens the box and the lights go out. And she goes, are you hungry? And then Alan comes down because he has fixed the elevator at the end of this book. And she asks he goes, is that a body? So Alan is just like perfectly okay with like the shenanigans of this building.
He's like, whatever.
And she's like, no, it's not a body yet. And because he's like, I'll just clean it up later, like leave the body, like whatever. And she's like, it's not a body. He's not dead. And she says, I need to get him upstairs. And he's like, oh, why didn't you say so? And like, Lucy is so disturbed by like how easily he participates. Yeah, he's like, oh, a crime? Cool, great. So Alan is going to take Fabian to the hospital. And so she goes up the elevator and gets off on the third floor, fourth floor, whatever floor it is, where Xavier's office is. So she goes in there, Digby's sitting at the desk. He goes, that doesn't look like my soda. And he like literally snorts a line. And he offers her some, and she goes, no, I'm with Reagan on this one. And he goes, it's not Coke, it's Daddy.
I was like, what?
I'm sorry? Excuse my finest pardon?
The fudge.
And she looks, and it surely is Daddy. The urn is open. What? I was okay with the Coke, you know? I'm okay with regular drugs. I'm not okay with people snorting their dead parents. I don't know. I don't think that's okay. I don't even know how you would test what that does to the body. I don't know. So she goes. She says, how do you even know? Asking about the Paris Den. And he goes, he says his dad's lawyer handed him a sealed envelope at the funeral. And he says, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. He says he's always wondered what was in that box, but he's like, by the time he was old enough to reach the box on the shelf, he really didn't care about it or even think about it anymore. And he said his father had always like kept him away from the box. And he said his father could have used that doll to make him rich, but his priorities were backwards, and now he's a pile of dust in this building that will also be a pile of dust because he's planning on selling the building to a developer. And he said he was holding off till he could find the next Stephen King. And she says, you just shot the next Stephen King. And he says, I caught the fatso trying to break in. And Digby pulls out Gail's gun. And he like tries to pull the trigger, but it jams. And he looks at the doll and he goes, I left you a sacrifice. I thought that was your deal. What do you want? Another body? And he lunges at Lucy, but she runs to the door, but it's locked because there's like a button under the desk. So now Digby has her knife because I don't know why she keeps dragging this knife around with her and everybody else but her has the knife. So she's able to get to the desk and she hits the button to open the door, but Digby attacks her and he like impales her to the desk. And so he grabs the doll and he just walks out and she hears him leave and then she hears like a thud outside and then she just passes out. So she wakes up and the knife is gone. And she's all bandaged up. And Cal is just like sitting across from her. And he hands her a coffee. And he tells her that, you should get some medicine before your arm gets infected. And Fabian called. He's okay. He's not dead. And she says, well, let's go down to my office before Digby comes. And Cal says, oh, you haven't heard? He was hit by a taxi on the sidewalk this morning. Drunk driver. So Sloppy Joe comes in and he gives her a list of all the people who wanted to kill her. And then he like asterisks all the ones who like tied her down. So basically like he had snuck in that day because he did not want to kill her. And he was the one who like freed her and gave her the knife. And Cal had basically told Sloppy Joe like when the meeting was happening. So like that's how he knew to come in there basically. And Joe says, you can fire them all, like, you're the boss now because Digby's dead. And basically, what we'll learn is when she was in the basement before Fabian went to the hospital, she had made a deal with the Patterson. She said, I will free you and let you into the world in exchange for Fabian's life. But she hadn't been expecting to become the boss of the publishing house. So she calls everyone in and she tells them that there was a training exercise last night and some of them attended it, but none of them are going to lose their jobs. And Cal is out and about in the neighborhood and he finds the doll at some random street vendor. So this thing is not, it's just all, it's like a Frisbee. And he brings it back. And so this time she doesn't put it in a box because like she's not concerned. It's, it should be well fed for right now. But she knows like by the end of the year she'll have to. And so basically she's not firing these people because she's going to feed them to the doll when it's time. And so we go to the epilogue and it is December 1st, 2019. And she's interviewing an intern who basically says, your publishing company is suffering because other than Transylvania Dirt, you guys haven't sold any horror books and basically horror's dead, everything except for Twilight. And they're going on and on. Basically, at this point, Lucy has taken on the role of Xavier. And the intern is like super excited, or the employee, whoever this person is they're interviewing, is like super excited. They really want to work here. And she's like, okay, like you have the job. And then they notice the doll and they're like, oh, the doll is so cute. And then Lucy starts to have a heart attack and the book ends.
Full circle
moment. So what did you think?
I enjoyed it. It wasn't, definitely isn't one that I'd reread.
Yeah.
I rated it 3 stars. Enjoyed it well enough. Not my favorite.
Yeah, it was okay.
It was slow, I think, in a lot of parts, but not slow to the point that it was unenjoyable.
I think I put 4, but I think I would give it a 3.5. Yeah. It was okay.
Yeah, it was good.
The thing I was going to say, so Lucy spelled that way actually means, I was like, this has to mean something. There's like, I was like, there's no reason that you're like signifying, because in the book, she's like, it's like they make a point to say it's like spelled like this. Lucy, like that, is a malevolent female creature in folklore that's associated with the tradition of Lucy Long Night. It's a tradition that takes place on December 13th, which was once considered the longest night of the year. During this night, it was believed that animals could speak. So it's a malevolent female creature. So I was like, it has to mean something. Mm-hmm. Like, there's just like no reason that, yeah. So there's that. Okay. Reviews.
Yes. So I already have one pulled up. It's a quick and easy one. So 5 stars. I'm giving this book 5 stars because it was exactly what I needed. I really wanted a Christmas book, but I'm not really into contemporary holiday books. I love creepy, so what better than a holiday horror story? It was a quick read and surprisingly funny. If holiday horror sounds better than holiday romance, then I think you'll love it too. And then 1 star. I absolutely hated this book, and I hate giving books 1 stars because I feel bad for the author, but dang, this book inspired something in me. This is the author's first horror book, and to be honest, think he should go back to whatever genre he was writing before. The writing isn't bad, but you could tell that horror was not his strong suit. Overall, I'm going to summarize this with a quote from a friend. God blessed me with eyes. I abused them.
What? Okay. Well, I don't know. Have you read other books by him?
No, I have not.
Okay.
But he has I don't know if you looked at all into his other series, or his other books, but I was like, oh, interesting. So he has the Obama-Biden mysteries.
Interesting.
And then like satirical stuff, 51 Shades, a parody.
Interesting.
Phil the Bernie Sanders mystery.
Interesting.
How to Survive a Sharknado and Other Unnatural Disasters.
Huh.
Great Philosophers Who Failed at Love. So, no, but it looks... Here, I'll show you the cover for the Obama-Biden mysteries. So this one is Hope Never Dies.
That's hilarious. Oh, yeah. So horror is not his genre. Okay. You know, some people try anything once.
Yeah.
Whatever. All right. Well, that kicked off December. So our next book is one of Keely's favorites. So A Court of Sugar and Spice by Rebecca F. Kinney, who we met.
Yes.
Yes.
It has a lot of triggers, so definitely check those out before reading.
So it's like a romantic fantasy?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I
it is a Nutcracker retelling.
Which I truly realized when I made my, like, what are you reading Wednesday? I don't know what the Nutcracker is about.
I used to, but that was like because I watched like the Barbie Nutcracker, you know.
Like, I'm just like, I get like if you're like, oh, you know the Nutcracker, and I'm like, yeah, but like, no, I really don't. Well, like, I guess I don't like know what the plot is.
General, like, with it is a prince is cursed and turned into like a little Nutcracker doll.
Oh, I couldn't have told you that. I literally like, what is the Nutcracker about? Like, I don't know. Okay, well, okay, so switching gears, that'll be that. Okay. All right. Well, that is all we have this week, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.